Welcome back. You're on once again with Paulo, and I just wanted to take you guys through the user interface, user experience updates that I've been working on this week to try to make it a better product for everyone to use moving forward. So what I've done is I've combined the input worksheet that you've all been using so far with the summary workbook that I've been sending out on Sundays after game day. So I've managed to combine the fixture, the ladders, all the individual team fixtures by conference, as well as the match day info, and then all of your team sheets, as well as some formatting changes to try to improve the user experience of those team sheets. So I'll just quickly take you through the workbook. This is the new one, version 2. I'll send you all a link with this video. It does take a little while to open, so just bear with it. There's a little kind of taskbar over here that will say calculating, and when it's complete, it'll have updated, in particular, all of the formatting changes to make it a bit easier for everyone to go through. So combining the other workbook that I send out on Sunday, it will show up with an AFL fixture, so you can do your research. It's pretty easy to filter by the round that you're in. You just select that little inverted pyramid, clear, select the round you want to look at, round 4, hit OK, and then you can see round 4. So in particular, I've got a ruck decision to make. Brodie Grundy versus Adelaide, or Max Gawn versus the Western Bulldogs. Now, Western Bulldogs haven't had a ruckman for years, so Gawny might be a pretty good choice there. We've got our conference fixtures. Similarly, clicking on the inverted pyramid, clearing, selecting the round you want, you can see the matchups for this week, our conference ladders, showing the 4 undefeated teams, M and myself in the Chizo conference, and Mini Pistol and Butler. All of this stuff's all linked, so it'll all automatically refresh each week after the games are played once I do the refresh. When you look at the conference fixtures, so in the Chizo conference, what I've done here is I have brought the for and against, so this will help feed the ladders, total points for, against, margin and total points. But what it also does is it looks at the current ladder position of yourself versus your opponent to see whether or not you've got a hard matchup. What it then does is calculates the total value of your opponents to look at a strength of schedule metric. And the higher the number, the easier your schedule. So, Chizo's got a remaining schedule of 57. I've got one of 62. So my schedule is a bit easier. Moving forward, Blackie's got a 66. And I think I saw M here. M's got a 68. So M and Blackie have the 2 easiest schedules in the Chizo conference moving forward. You can also see, just in the current matchups, I played Jacko last week, who was the number 1 ranked team. I'm playing Webby this week, and then I play M next week, who's the number 1 team. So, this number here will change each week based on the performance of your opponents. Same thing in the Chizo, in the Pistol conference. The match day info, so I've brought in rounds 1, 2 and 3, so the 3 rounds that we've played so far, and you would have seen these before. These are the ones that I send out on Sunday afternoons. Once again, click on the pluses at the top to expand out the totals, and then press the pluses along the side to get your individual player names and all of their individual scores. So you can do that for the whole thing. Do that for rounds 1, 2, and 3. All right. So here's the big changes, guys. So what I've done here in the input sheets is try to make it a bit cleaner. So the first thing you'll notice is everything's pretty much white for players now. So all player names are now in white, and all commons are now in white. So you can immediately see on your playing field who your common cards are, and then who your special cards are. You can see in the line. So looking at Chizo, he's got his two specials in the back line. He's got two specials in the mid/ruck, and he's got one up forward, and the rest of them are all commons. I'll quickly jump over to my team. I'm more familiar with it. So that's the playing field. So so I've got a bunch of milestone players, a couple of contested beasts, and a jigsaw. Over here in the data table, I've added in an extra column, which is column AB, which denotes their super coach position. So, this is we'll call it the Gory Darcy McPherson rule. This is where you're going to say whether or not Darcy McPherson is a forward or a defender. And once you start looking at your bench, it'll make it easy for you to start looking at the players that you want to move up and down into your starting 22. The other thing I've done in this data table is started to bring in injuries. So we've got an injury sheet that shows all of our injured players in the first 3 rounds and those that still have injuries. So, I unpacked Tom Stewart this week. So I'll show you what happens when I bring in Thomas Stewart. To what was he, Geelong? So you can see his name has turned to red, and over here it's brought in his expected return. So pretty much every time I update the injury list, it will automatically refresh to highlight the players on your team that are injured and highlight when their expected return date is. The other big change on each of our individual team worksheets is some analytics that I've brought in. So the first thing is I've brought in a average, a rolling 3-game average per player, seen in column AH. So this is taking the data from match day 1, 2, and 3, and all of the source data in the background for people who didn't play in those matches, so your bench positions, and showing the rolling 3-game average for that player. I've then done some conditional formatting to kind of indicate whether or not they're tracking well or not so well. So in the captain position, anyone who's getting, I think it was above a 120 gets a green. Between 100 and 120 is a black, and anything below 100 is a red. If you're starting a captain who's getting you less than 100 on average, you probably need to relook at your captain. In defence and forward, similarly, anyone above 100 gets a green. I think it's between 90 and 100 will get you a black, and anyone below 90 will be a red player. In the midfield, the threshold is 115 for green, 100 to 115 for black, and then anyone below 100 in the midfield will get you, isn't tracking too well, will get you a red. And then similarly down on the bench, I think I followed the forward defence rule for all of the people on the bench. Anyone over 100 will get you a green. Basically, anyone below 90 will show up as a red. So back to what I was saying before about the decision between Grundy and Max Gawn this week, I can see that so far. So I unpacked a Max Gawn last week and I didn't use him. Grundy's been averaging 128 as a contested beast. Max Gawn's been averaging 139 as a die cut. So what it does is it also brings in the multiplier for the card type that you are using. So that 139 is based on it being a die cut. So if I change him to a common, that number should change. It's just going to take a little bit. Twitch makes the computer run very, very slow, unfortunately. There you go. It's gone down to 133, so it's lost a few points off there. So let's put him back to being a die cut for me. So all you need to do as coaches is manage these columns AB to AE. So you unpack your cards, you modify your team list by selecting their position, by selecting their name, their team, and their card type, and all the other formulas will just pick up that data, and they'll apply the multiplier, and they'll apply the averages for you. All of these are pick lists, so click on the drop down and you can see all the different position types. Click on the name value, and it will bring up all of the player names that are playing at the moment. So the last bit of analytics that I've brought in looks at how they've tracked over those 3 weeks to get to that rolling average. So if we just scroll across a little bit, we'll start to see individual player performance and performance against their forecast. So the forecast column, so if we look at round 3, the forecast column is the average score that player has achieved against that opponent in the last 3 years. So for some players, it might only be a couple of games. So for some players, it might be one game plus another average that I use. For some players, a Swans player versus GWS, for example, Josh Kennedy would be a good example. For Josh Kennedy, that's basically a 6-game average because he plays GWS twice a year. So that's the Supercoach average for that player against that opponent. The actual is what they actually scored in the game that we simulated based on the algorithm and the plus minus. And then what it does is it looks at the performance of that player against its forecast. So going to, looking at my captain, Brodie Grundy, he was forecasted to get a 132. He actually scored a 99, so he had a bit of a shit week. So his performance was 75% of his forecast. In week 2, he was forecast to get 157 and he scored 166. So he scored 106% of forecast. And then back in round 1, 132, and he got a 118 actual. So he struck at about 90%. So you can see here the relative performance of your players against forecast and how that feeds into their 3-game average. So you can start to see the players that are tracking well. So in my case here, Luke Shuey. Luke Shuey has 3 weeks in a row of scoring above his forecasted average. And then Josh Dunkley, I won't use Dunkley actually. Have I got any? I could probably go down to my bench. I've got, there we go, Nat 5. So a lot of people, I started Nat 5 in week 1. Nat 5 has not done well in this program. He has consistently scored. 81% is his highest performance in week 1 and week 3, and a 75% in week 2. And that's really dragged his average down to that 97. So what I'm going to be doing moving forward from week 4 onwards is, along with their average against their opponent over the last 3 years, I'm also going to bring in their rolling 3-game average. So that will introduce recency bias. Reward the players who are playing well, and then penalise the players who are playing bad. So, 5's average may be, let's go down to him again. So looking at the previous 3 weeks, his average was 116, 139, and 113. In week 4, I'm going to be bringing in an extra data point of 97. So that's going to drag his score down slightly. And then players like Shuey, who have been playing really well, 122, 110, 123, he's going to get an extra 123 into his data point. So that will help kind of drag his scores up. And then this plus here, which might take a little while to open, has rounds 4 through to round 17. So each week, the data will refresh and we'll pick up all of that data and then adjust the averages. So there's a bit of manual calculations I'll need to kind of do in the background. Unfortunately, I tried to build something that would withstand Google Sheets, but unfortunately, I've spent the last half an hour trying to get it to work, but unfortunately, as soon as you bring it into Google Sheets and then bring it back to Excel, it kills a whole bunch of macros and kills a whole bunch of formulas, and it just doesn't work. So I had to strip it back to something that will work for you guys from an input perspective, and then I'll still have to do some kind of data massaging in the background to get your sheets out, run it through the game engine, and then push the results back in to feed the other sheets. So that's about it. I'll send you all the link now. I hope you like the new interface, and hopefully it is a better user experience for you all. You can download to Excel. If you download to Excel, just remember to when you, let's see if I can. So if you download to Excel, you can copy and paste back into Google Sheets. I just ask that you right mouse click and paste values only. So that will basically bring in the values of your spreadsheet without overriding any of the formatting, particularly the conditional formatting that's been baked into it now. I'm keeping copies each week though, so if something does go awry, it's easy for me to kind of restore via a backup. All right, that's it, guys. I hope you're all having fun. I'll look to see what else can be kind of improved in the future. I'm still trying to figure out a way to bring benches into the game, potentially vice captain into the game. Just haven't quite worked that out yet. So yeah. All right, I'll leave it there, and I'll chat to you all on Slack. Have a good night.